Boldwood presents A Year of Mr. Maybe's, written by Judy Leigh and read by Phillida Nash. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Prologue. Last Christmas. The smell of sizzling turkey and roasting potatoes wafted from the kitchen, drifting on the air. The dining-room table was set for two, gleaming china, silver cutlery, a linen cover, crystal glasses, and two gold crackers embellished with the words, "Merry Christmas." A bottle of Chilean red wine was open. The smart speaker was playing all the Christmas favourites, and currently Bing Crosby was warbling White Christmas. Outside it was raining, an incessant lattice of drizzle, grey and cold from sky to tarmac. Val wasn't surprised. It was typical winter weather in Merrinporth, a quiet inland town in the north of Cornwall. What mattered today was that Christmas dinner would be perfect. She glanced at the clock. It was 10 minutes to 2. Ray had promised to be home at 2 on the dot. She had time to baste the bird, check the Yorkshire puddings and stir the gravy. She glanced at the tree. The twinkling lights were off. She touched a switch and the little bulbs flickered. Then the pine branches became dancing red berries. Brenda Lee began to sing "Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree," and Val hummed along, slightly out of tune. Even though it was just the two of them, Tom was living in Canada now. The idea of Christmas with Ray filled her with contentment. They'd spend quality time, a late Christmas lunch, then exchange presents in front of the television. Val had bought Ray a fire cube. She had no idea what a fire cube was, but he'd said he wanted one, so she had secretly wrapped it in pretty cream paper, covered in smiling snowmen, and placed it beneath the tree. It was almost 2. Val hadn't minded when Ray had suggested he might pop out for a swift drink with the boys from the bowling club. He'd said he'd only be an hour or so. She'd kissed his cheek and joked that he shouldn't drink too much or it would ruin his appetite. He'd have a pint and make it last. He didn't want to spoil the wonderful lunch. Chris Rere's gravelly voice came through the speaker, singing "Driving Home for Christmas." Ray would be home at any moment. Val scuttled into the kitchen and opened the oven. Steam surrounded her face, rising like a magic spell. The turkey was golden brown, the potatoes mouth-watering. It was perfect. She closed the oven door and hurried back into the dining room to check the table. There was a smudge on one of the crystal glasses. Val picked up a napkin and wiped it. She checked her reflection in the mirror. Her hair was neat, freshly coloured. Her cheeks were glowing a little from the heat of the oven, but it gave her a healthy sheen. She adjusted her Christmas jumper, emblazoned with a robin wearing a red pom-pom hat. For a woman in her early 70s, she looked fine. Val glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 2:10. She checked her phone in case he'd left her a message. Nothing. Just the text from Tom that arrived an hour ago. "Happy Christmas, Mum and Dad." She gazed around the room. The tree was bright with clusters of flashing berries. The table was pristine. There was nothing left to do. Mariah Carey was singing "All I Want for Christmas Is You," trilling the high notes. Val hummed along. Ray was late. She peered through the curtains. The drizzle was persistent, the slanting downpour that soaked quickly into clothes. An idea popped into her head. The Salmon and Sprat was a 15-minute walk away, but only a 5-minute drive. Ray was probably on his way back, but she'd pick him up in the car. He'd be home and dry, and lunch would still be perfect. Val grabbed her jacket and the car keys to the duster. Ray would be glad to have a smiling chauffeur to bring him home. He'd peck her cheek, happily installed inside the warm, dry car. She glanced over her shoulder, silently going through a checklist. Food, wine, tree, music. Everything was fine, ready for when they arrived back home. It was all Happy Christmas perfect. Val parked outside the Sprat and wished she'd brought a hat. The rain was torrential now, and her hair was completely wet. She rushed into the bar and glanced around. Festive lights flashed from every corner. The smell of hops hung heavily. Voices chattered, some loud, laughing, others low, a chuckle from a joke, a steady drone. Someone was telling a yarn. She stood still, glancing around for Ray, for his white curls, just visible below a fisherman's cap, his navy blue jacket. There were several older men in groups seated at tables, 70-somethings, clutching pints and chatting. She assumed they must be the bowling club. She couldn't see Ray amongst them. She sidled through the bar, past the throng of people waiting to be served, and stood in the doorway that led to the almost empty snug. Ray was in there, sitting down. She spotted him straight away. His hat was off, his jacket too. He was sporting the Christmas jumper that proclaimed the words, "Bar Humbug." She'd bought it for him a week ago. He was cradling a glass of beer. Val stared harder and realised that it was difficult to breathe. She had forgotten to exhale. She was holding air in her lungs as she watched her husband, his arm around a woman. They were talking together as if it was the most natural thing. Val scrutinised the woman. She was in her late 50s, younger than Ray, younger than Val. Val took in the tinsel she wore like a crown, the flaxen hair, short skirt. She wasn't at all like Val. Ray whispered something into her ear, and she squealed as if she'd been pinched. Ray put a hand to her face, gently removing something, glitter, a hair, a crumb. Val noticed the tenderness of his fingers, the intimate way he brushed the woman's cheek, their mutual trust. There was a practised familiarity between them. He hadn't just met this woman. They had known each other for some time. It was an established affair. The woman pressed her lips against his and laughed again. Val stared, not knowing what to do. She was filled with a sharp new realization that made her take in every vivid detail. Then the woman glanced up and caught Val's eye, a moment's recognition that this must be the wife. In that instant they both knew. The woman turned to Ray, alarmed. Val gasped, stepping backwards, stung. Then her feet were carrying her through the bar, out into the pelting rain, and back to the duster. She started the engine, listening to the soothing rumble, and then, like any other woman driving a car on Christmas Day, she pulled calmly out of the car park and drove home. She deposited the car in the drive and walked into the welcoming warmth of the hall. The rich aroma of the roast filled her nostrils, the promise of Christmas cheer. Before she entered the dining room, Val could hear the Jackson 5 singing, "I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus." She closed her eyes. She'd left home over 20 minutes ago. Now she was back. Everything she'd known as normal had changed forever in an instant. 47 years of marriage gone in a blink. She took a deep breath. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't be angry. She wouldn't let what she'd seen in the pub spoil her Christmas. She locked the front door, bolting it firmly, then rushed to the back door and turned the key. She drew the curtains in the dining room with a swish and spoke to the smart speaker. Louder, louder again. Elvis Presley was crooning Blue Christmas, his voice sorrowful, mourning. Val hurried into the kitchen, returning to the table with dishes of steaming roast potatoes, vegetables, hot gravy, Yorkshires. She rushed back to the oven, hauling out the huge turkey, easing it onto a serving dish with a flourish. Val sat at the table, her crystal glass brimming with the Chilean wine, her plate piled with the steaming lunch, her fork held high. Then, shattering the chirpy song from the speaker, Santa Claus is coming to town, there was the clatter at the door she'd been expecting, keys being turned. Seconds later there was a rattling, the door being pushed against a heavy bolt. Then an abrupt banging of a fist against wood and a man's plaintive voice. "Val! Val! Let me in!" Val began to eat. She sipped wine. Winter Wonderland drifted smoothly from the speaker. She helped herself to more gravy, the brown liquid splashing across the plate. "Val, open the door, please." She stabbed a Brussels sprout, coated it in gravy, held it up on her fork to examine it, and then pushed it whole into her mouth. "Val, if this is about what you saw in the pub, if it's about Monica, I can explain. Val, please." She sliced a piece of turkey in half with her knife, then sliced it again. She pierced it with her fork. "Val!" Val gulped wine, hacked a Yorkshire pudding in half. She hummed aloud to the music. Lunch was delicious. Lunch for one with Ray outside, soaking wet and cold, harsh though it was the most satisfying thing in the world right now. "Val," Ray pleaded. He waited a moment. Then his tone changed to one of irritation. "Val, I'm freezing out here." She helped herself to more wine, more turkey, more of everything. That was what she'd do now. She'd help herself to whatever she wanted without thinking about anyone else, without thinking about Ray. "Val, let me in." He sounded pitiful. But she wouldn't relent. Not now, not ever. Ray's voice was a tight whine. "Val, please. I'm getting really cold." Frank Sinatra started to croon from the speaker. "Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow." Val took a deep breath and turned the volume up in the hope that Ray would hear every word, and went back to her Christmas lunch for one. Chapter 1. This Christmas. Lowenstowe was a jewel on the coast of North Cornwall, sparkling like a sapphire in the white winter sun. The small seaside town was 5 miles from Merrinporth, from the Salmon and Spratter Inn, 5 miles from Ray and Monica. It was the perfect place for Val to find refuge, to start again, to allow the winds from the west to blow painful memories away, to watch waves ebb and flow, and to heal. And on this Christmas day, the breeze-blown beach was almost empty. A jogger loped along the shoreline, and a man in a brown coat strode in the other direction, alongside a bear-like dog. Down by the water's edge, a woman in a beret and aviator sunglasses stooped to pick up empty bottles. The tide was rolling in, splashing surf over smooth sand, tugging away again. Overhead, a seagull swooped down with a throaty caw to snatch a fast food carton from the ground. Beyond the beach, small fishing boats clustered in a little harbour, bobbing gently, knotted safely to sturdy poles. The sun dipped behind a cloud as the wind rippled the water. Not far from the beach, there was a row of 3 traditional fishermen's cottages, each with a square patch of garden in front, a privet hedge, a larger rectangle to the rear. The street was deserted. Sand swirled by the curb, grains lifted and dropped in a sudden gust of wind. A flame-throated robin settled on a rickety gatepost, its beady eyes searching for grubs. On the walls of one of the end cottages, colourful lights flashed and twinkled. Inside the middle cottage, Val was busy arranging photographs, plumping cushions, positioning books on shelves. She stood back and surveyed the living room. It didn't feel like home, not yet. Val pushed a strand of hair behind her ear, a thick pale tendril that had escaped from the scrunchie. One of the straps of her dungarees had worked its way down her arm, and she hauled it over her shoulder. She glanced around the lounge. The fire blazed in the wood-burning stove. Gold lights winked from the tiny tree in the corner. This was her new home. It still felt strange, not quite hers yet. The Merrinporth house had finally sold. She'd moved to Lowenstowe 2 days ago. She'd been desperate to be in her new house by Christmas Day, and she'd just made it. She hadn't unpacked everything yet, but she was determined that her first Christmas alone would be about new beginnings, a chance to indulge in everything she'd enjoy, especially after last year's fiasco. She needed a new start. She needed to move forward. She needed time to settle. But of course it wasn't her first Christmas alone. She closed her eyes and recalled the lunch last year. Ray banging at the front door for almost half an hour, his face shining and wet with rain. She remembered his whining tone, his initial lies and excuses, and then, eventually, the truth about the affair. By that evening, Ray had moved in somewhere with Monica, and Val stayed put for the next 11 months, stuck inside the house that contained so many memories, until it was finally sold. The divorce had been lengthy. She had bought the 3-bedroom terraced cottage near the seafront. She had a car, a second-hand black Mini Cooper, parked outside. Ray had taken the duster. But it was little consolation after so many years. With a pension from almost 40 years of teaching in a primary school, the last 10 as deputy head, she was independent now. But it wasn't going to be easy. Losing Ray was like losing an arm. She still woke up, thinking he was there next to her, his head on the pillow. There were many bad days, and Val wondered if this Christmas Day might be another. Feelings were still raw, memories still hurt. Val flopped down on the sofa, picking up a pile of Christmas cards. One was from her younger sister in Manchester, just inscribed to Val, no mention of Ray now, signed from Tricia and Bob. One was from her son in Canada, with love from Tom and Lottie, his girlfriend since last March. Another card, a glittery picture with a jolly robin on the front, conveyed best wishes from Ray and Monica. Another difficult moment, and all couples. Val sighed. She couldn't remember how many cards she'd posted this year. Val wondered what she would cook for Christmas lunch. Not turkey. Never again. The thought of it made her stomach lurch. An omelette, maybe, with a glass of red, Chilean, of course. Or just an apple, a bar of chocolate. She could do as she liked now. She glanced at the little television set. She wouldn't turn it on today. She preferred the radio, a friendly voice, or the smart speaker, a few random Christmas songs, or the lilt and swell of an orchestra. Ray had kept their flat-screen TV, and she recalled how he would always have the television blaring loudly from the moment he woke up. There would be the constant rattle of football, golf, snooker, news, soaps, quizzes. He'd watch everything, while Val curled up quietly with a book. He'd wanted to keep the set. He was probably watching it now with Monica. The familiar, painful feelings of inadequacy and rejection welled up again, and Val gritted her teeth, determined to be strong. She had loved Ray, of course. If she was being honest, she still loved him. He'd been her everyday, her normality. He was sweet and handsome, a doting father, a generous husband. There had always been little gifts, compliments. Life had been steady. He'd been a civil engineer before he'd retired. They'd holidayed abroad every August. Then, after Tom had finished his degree in environmental science and settled in Bristol, Val and Ray had visited him regularly until the split with Sophie, which had sent him off to work in Montreal 2 years ago. He'd been back twice. He loved Canada, and now he had a girlfriend there. Val thought she might visit him in the new year and meet Lottie. She sighed. Tom had barely mentioned the split from Ray. He'd just asked if she was all right, and each time she'd answered with a stoic yes, he'd proceeded to tell her about how wonderful Montreal was. Val picked up Tom's card again and studied the photo. Snowdrifts, pine trees, the sky bright blue. What wasn't to like? Her fingers moved to the card with the glittery robin, Ray and Monica's. Inside was a folded note. It was one of those "what we did together this year" photocopies that they'd have sent to everyone who knew them. Val could see the corner of a photo. Ray's chin, a tuft of flaxen hair against his cheek. She wouldn't read it. She supposed that the card was an apology of sorts. He was probably still fond of her. At moments like this, she was overcome with sadness all over again. There was a soft knock at the door, and Val glanced up, surprised at the interruption to her quiet Christmas. She lugged the strap of her dungarees back over her shoulder and padded softly into the hall, dragging back the heavy curtain that kept out draughts. She opened the front door and gazed at a striking woman standing on the path. She was around Val's own age, early 70s, with light hair cut to frame a pleasant, smiling face and twinkling eyes. She held out a hand. "Hello, I'm your neighbour." "Val Maxwell." Val took the hand, strangely conscious of using her maiden name. It had been Watson for so long. "Cornelia Randall, but call me Connie. I just popped over to introduce myself. I won't stay. It's Christmas Day. You've probably got a house full of family." Val listened hard to the woman's voice. She had a pleasant accent, probably not English. She was holding something in her hand wrapped in paper. Val said, "Oh, do come in, Connie. It's freezing out here. What am I thinking? Happy Christmas." She ushered Connie into the warmth of the house, closing the door firmly, leading the way into the small square lounge. Connie gazed around, taking in the pale walls, the colourful cushions, the blazing fire, the tiny tree, the coffee table. She rubbed her hands together. "You've made this so lovely in here. Are you sure I'm not interrupting?" "No, not at all." Val felt a little awkward as her visitor moved towards the hearth to examine a photo of Tom, his graduation years ago. She gave a little cough. Can I get you a drink? Tea? Coffee?" As an afterthought, she added, "Sherry?" "Oh, tea, please. Anything herbal," Connie said hopefully. "Please, sit down," Val offered, and Connie dropped to her knees next to the fire, nestling on the rug like a happy cat. "It's so cosy," Connie sighed. Val hurried to the kitchen and returned carrying a tray, 2 steaming mugs, and a packet of chocolate biscuits, making a mental note to herself to stock up on herbal teas in case her neighbour called again. She offered a tentative smile. "Blackcurrant all right?" "Perfect," Connie replied. "It's good of you to make tea. I've just called round to introduce myself. I saw you arrive 2 days ago and have been meaning to pop over to say hello. I wanted to say Happy Christmas." "And to you." Val lifted her mug. "Which house is yours, Connie?" "The one directly opposite. Honeysuckle House." Connie glanced up. "The Simpsons who lived in this house before you were lovely, but I don't think I've been in here more than half a dozen times. They were from London. This place was a holiday cottage. But then you probably know that. They had 2 teenagers. I don't remember it being as homely and comfortable as this." I'm going to love living here. Val cupped her mug in both hands. So, what are you up to for Christmas? Nothing much, Connie said, gazing into the fire. I was going to have a quiet day. I really didn't intend to interrupt yours. You must have plans. I haven't. Why don't you stay for lunch? Val decided that Christmas was a time for sharing, and it might be nice to get to know her new neighbour. Oh, no, I'd be intruding. I feel so awful barging in on Christmas Day. Not at all, Val said cheerfully. I'd enjoy the company. Then I'd love to. Connie's eyes shone with gratitude. I brought this by way of a gift. She handed Val the package folded in tissue paper. It's just a small thing. I popped over to say welcome. The tissue paper unwrapped itself in Val's hand, revealing a pretty lilac tea light, the holder carved from teak. Val sniffed the candle and exhaled slowly. Lavender, Connie explained. Very relaxing. It's lovely, thank you. Val offered the biscuits, and Connie shook her head, sipping from her mug. Val coughed politely. So, how long have you lived across the road? Almost 2 years, Connie replied. The light from the fire illuminated one side of her face, glowing orange. I had an antique shop over in Penashbury for a long time. It was well past the time for me to retire, so I sold it. I wanted to live near the sea, so I came here. I live a quiet life. And is there a Mr. Val tried to remember her surname. Mr. Randall? Connie shook her head again. Mike died 20 years ago. Since then, it's just been me. Oh, I'm sorry. I just worked and worked. The antiques gave me something to focus on. Connie waved away Val's embarrassment with one hand. And is there a Mr. Maxwell? No. Val's voice was emphatic. She squeezed her mug as if trying to throttle it. Feelings of rejection were flooding back. Divorced. I'm moving on. Then we're both single women, Connie said. Val thought about the accent. You're not English. Originally, I mean. I'm from Leiden, in Holland. I've been living here for... Connie counted on her fingers. I met Mike when I was 25, and I'm now 74, so close to 50 years. Can you still hear the accent? A little. Connie indicated the photo on the mantelpiece of Tom skiing. Is that handsome young man your son? Tom, yes. He's working in Canada. Connie shook her head sadly. Our children don't stay close, do they? She gazed into the flames. My son lives in New Zealand. I'm hoping he'll visit next year. It would be nice to see him. Val agreed. Maybe we need to go to them and stay for a month or two. She'd almost finished her tea. New Zealand looks lovely in photos. I've never been to Canada. I need to travel more now. Now I'm on my own. I'm with you all the way on that, Val, Connie said. It's so nice to have a new neighbour. I tend to be a bit reclusive, living by myself. It will be good to have someone to talk to. She put out a hand and touched Val's arm, suddenly apologetic. Oh, I didn't mean I'd be pestering you all the time. Not at all, Val replied. So, tell me about the other neighbours. I haven't met them yet. Connie's face shone in the firelight. On one side, there's Kevin and Alice Holmes. They are lovely. On the other side is Ben Berry. He's a fisherman in his 70s. He's usually out on his boat. Sometimes I go weeks without seeing him, but he's very nice. An interesting man with a busy life. She sighed briefly. It's very quiet around here, but the sea is only a few minutes' walk away. Just beyond the harbour, there's Breakstone Beach. I love being outdoors, Val said. The glow of the fire and the twinkling tree light suddenly lifted her mood, reminding her that it was Christmas Day. "So, you're staying for lunch?" Val pressed Connie's arm. "It'll be the perfect opportunity for you to tell me all about the town." She was thoughtful for a moment. "I'll need a social life." "Can I help you to cook?" Connie's eyes shone. "It's such a treat to be in someone else's kitchen." "Be my guest." Val struggled to her feet, picking up the tray and the unopened biscuits. "We can eat whatever we like. Afterwards, it'll be a nice glass of something delicious. Port or Irish cream." "I haven't had port in years," Connie exclaimed. "And I've never had Irish cream. I might try both." "Great." Val's smile widened. "What would you like for lunch?" Connie shrugged. "A sandwich would be fine." "We can do better than that today." Val waved a hand towards the kitchen. "How does salmon with lemon and parsley sound?" "It sounds heavenly." Connie closed her eyes, her face dreamy. "Come on, then. Let's do Christmas." Val launched herself towards the kitchen, Connie one step behind her. She suddenly recalled her previous Christmas lunch, the fiasco, Ray outside, soaked to the skin, yelling, the rain beating against the window, as she sat in the dining room at the pristine table. This Christmas couldn't be more different, and it already felt much more enjoyable. Chapter 2. Val woke up early, dressed and rushed down to the kitchen. She was going to make some gooey chocolate brownies for the neighbours. Christmas Day with Connie had been pleasant. They had sipped Irish cream and talked into the evening. Connie seemed quite a reserved person, and she said that the neighbours mostly kept themselves to themselves. But Lowenstowe was Val's home now. She wanted to integrate, and the best place to start was with the people who lived close by. She no longer had any contacts back in Merenporth. She and Ray had often spent time with other couples, Paul and Helen, James and Cathy. But now she was no longer married. They'd lost touch. Val sighed. The men were all members of the bowling club. The women were simply their wives. Val shook flour into a sieve. She had firm feelings about that. She'd never really enjoyed those social events, and now she wasn't going to be just a wife any more, being friends with her husband's friends' wives for the sake of convenience. Ray had never noticed her uneasiness as he'd played bowls with the men. But Val wasn't an appendage now. She'd make new friends, and they wouldn't be women with nothing in common, who gathered while the men were enjoying themselves to talk about their grown children, reality television, and how much better life was now the menopause was over. She placed the brownies in the oven. Yesterday had been a wet Boxing Day, and she'd spent the day unpacking. But today was bright, the pale winter sun high in the sky. She was determined to be sociable, and the best way was to offer the neighbours fudgy, chocolatey brownies. When the brownies were baked and cooled, Val placed 4 wrapped portions in a basket, tugged on a coat, and stepped outside. Across the street was Connie's home, Honeysuckle House, with a green door beyond a little gate. There was a brass knocker shaped like a horseshoe. Val rapped, waited. Then she knocked again. No sound came from inside, so Val presumed that Connie must be out or still in bed. It wasn't yet 10 o'clock, so either was possible. Val placed a wrapped portion of 4 brownies on the step and hoped Connie wouldn't squash them if she arrived home in darkness. She turned back to gaze at the block of 3 cottages, her own little house, Teasle Cottage, nestling in the middle. Cloud Cottage to the left was very tidy, with leaded light windows and a smart black door. Any available space on the outside had been crammed with twinkling fairy lights. A glittering Santa held up his thumb and winked with an LED light as he clambered towards the roof, on a ladder that flashed red and gold. To the right, the walls of the other cottage were overrun with clambering ivy, and there was no light inside. The rickety gate at the front had been tied with rope. Val decided she'd try the dark house first, then deliver the last brownies to the bright house, where people were almost certainly at home. She was looking forward to meeting them. She unhooked the rope and approached the front door. A faded sign, Crab Claw Cottage, painted on a piece of driftwood, hung on a single jutting nail. Val knocked at the door. Old paint was flaking. She knocked again, but there was no answer, so she placed the foil-wrapped brownies on the step and backed away, closing the gate firmly behind her. Music came from Cloud Cottage, the blaring of a television that flashed from inside. A huge glittering reindeer head, the mouth gaping, was stuck to the window with little suction pads. Val knocked and the door was opened almost immediately. A woman wearing a long dress, her hair a mass of curls, waved a hand. "Hello, are you our new neighbour? Pleased to meet you. I didn't call round before. I didn't want to bother you straight away, as you'd only just arrived, but—" The woman took a breath. "Come in. You're welcome." She led Val into a warm hall, then into an even warmer lounge with a leather sofa, a tall Christmas tree, and a huge television screen, which was being watched by a large man in a colourful T-shirt and jogging bottoms. A modern gas fire was belting out dry heat. The man twisted round, his face shining. "Hello? Who's this, then?" "Kev, this is our new neighbour. She's— Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't get your name. I'm Alice, and this is Kevin." "Val Maxwell." Val held out the brownies in tinfoil. "I brought you these. Happy Christmas." "Oh, lovely." Alice unwrapped the brownies, crumbs falling onto the floor, and handed them to Kevin, who took one and crammed half of it into his mouth. "Lovely," he repeated, chocolate on his lips. "Cup of coffee?" Alice was already on her way to the kitchen to make it. Kevin gazed up, his brow wrinkled. "So, how are you settling down in Teasle Cottage, Val? Just you on your own, is it? The Simpsons were nice enough people from London. They only came here 4 times a year, so it's good to have someone next door all the time." He laughed. "It was mayhem here on Christmas Day, a whole family round the table for lunch. I'm glad of a bit of peace and quiet today." He stretched out his legs. "But that's how I like it. Just me and Alice, now the kids have grown and flown." Val listened to the television, rattling and distant clattering sounds coming from the kitchen. Alice dropped something, muttered, "Bugger," then shouted, "Kev! Dolly's out!" Val had no idea what Alice meant, but Kevin was already on his feet, staggering towards Val as a bullet-headed dog rushed into the lounge, leaping up at the furniture, at Val, at Kevin, circling in a frenzy and then hurling itself at Alice as she totted in with a tray. Kevin grasped the dog by the collar and stroked her with his free hand. "Dolly, Dolly, calm down. You'll soon get to know Val from next door. Calm down." The dog licked his hand and leapt onto the leather sofa, turning round twice before curling up and resting her head on her paws. Kevin sat next to the dog and indicated it affectionately with a nod of his head. "This is Dolly." "She's a Staffordshire Bull Terrier," Alice said by way of explanation. "Kev loves her to bits. She's called Dolly after Dolly Parton." Kevin cradled the dog's hard head between his hands, placing a kiss between the beady eyes. Alice proffered a cup of coffee to Val. "Shall we have one of those delicious brownies each? Come and sit down, and you can tell us all about yourself. I love being next to the fire. I hate the winter. It's too cold." Val plonked herself on the sofa next to Kevin and an already snoozing Dolly. She brought the mug to her lips and sipped, taking in Alice's friendly smile and Kevin's arm wrapped tightly around the dog. Val instinctively liked them both, their welcoming, generous natures. But she was less sure about the boisterous dog. Alice reached over and patted her knee. Lowenstowe is one of the nicest towns in Cornwall. You'll soon settle here. Before long, you'll know just about everyone. Where did you move from? Merenporth, Val replied. Oh, it's nice there. Kevin was still staring at the television. I have a few regular customers in Merenporth. Some good pubs there, too. Val nodded, although she didn't want to mention the Sprat. The memories of last year would start to tumble again. It's better here in Lowenstowe, though, Alice chirped. We're a friendly lot. You won't need to worry about anything at all, Val. Anything you need, just ask. Kev's always on hand, too, if you need a bit of DIY. I'd be glad to help, Kevin said. And the brownies, best I've ever had. You'll have to give me the recipe, Alice gushed. Val found herself relaxing into the softness of the sofa. Kevin winked conspiratorially as Alice continued to explain the delights of Lowenstowe and how Val would soon be part of the furniture. Val smiled happily. They were both generous, kind-hearted people, and she already felt welcome. The heat and the soft lilt of Alice's voice made her eyelids droop. She hoped she wouldn't drift off to sleep. An hour later, Val felt the brisk tingle of cold, bracing winter air against her face as she strolled to Breakstone Beach past the harbour wall and onto the sand, the breeze tugging long strands from the scrunchie. The coastline stretched into the distance as far as the eye could see, rugged cliffs rising like jagged teeth to the left, the tide frothing to the right. She smiled. Cornwall was locked in her heart. Being outdoors made her feel happy. Lowenstowe was a breathtaking place with its dramatic shores, pounding surf, craggy rocks, little fishing harbours, and beyond, the pretty town with its slow pace of life and warm-hearted people. Val knew that it would come alive with a buzz in the summer, which brought in visiting families, bronzed, tangle-haired surfers, so many bright camper vans. But the winter had its own desolate beauty, when the beaches were bare and the weather fickle. Val always felt at home on the beach, inhaling clean air, the brightness of the vast sky making her blink. She was hugged in the arms of the wind, buoyed along by the constant surge of the sea, wide awake now, the wind so forceful and cold it seemed to press hard against her eyeballs and make her eyes water. The waves whispered in her ears, the sand extending for miles ahead, and the cold air stung her cheeks. She felt full of energy. She was glad she'd chosen to move to Lowenstowe. Alice and Kevin were welcoming. The neighbour on the other side was solitary and mysterious. Val was looking forward to meeting him, and Connie was delightful. Val decided she'd call into Honeysuckle House later to check that Connie had found the brownies on the doorstep. Her feet picked up a rhythm as a song repeated in her head. 3 Little Birds by Bob Marley. 3 seagulls soared overhead, swooping down onto the beach to peck at a discarded food wrapper, standing together in the sand so still as if made of wood. Val's footsteps matched the song's beat, and the lyrics repeated in her mind. She felt happy. She had moved house, and now she was on the way to reclaiming her life. The sea rushed forward and sucked back again, crinkled as tinfoil. Behind the water was a silvery sky, the sun high and pale. Her boots sank slightly into the softness of the sand, and she strode forward, filled with optimism. A new year would begin soon, full of opportunity. This last year had been busy and fraught with change, but she was determined to heal. It still hurt to remember, but Ray had become someone she didn't know anymore. He was Monica's partner. He was someone else. The thought filled her with sadness, but Val pushed it from her mind. Further down the beach, a man and two small boys were throwing a stick towards a leaping black and white shaggy dog. Val wondered if it might be nice to own a pet. She recalled Dolly, Kevin's boisterous staffy, with a fond smile, and decided a cat might be easier, purring gently, sleeping in front of the log fire on a rug. A man was jogging close to the shoreline, a beanie on his head. He was no youngster, probably her own age. Val wondered if he felt the cold. His arms were tanned, sinewy. He seemed fit, certainly. She wondered if she might take up jogging on the beach in the new year. She might manage a mile each day. No, walking was much easier on the ankle joints nowadays. On the horizon, a little fishing boat nodded steadily on waves that sparkled in sunlight. The coming year loomed in the distance, like a boat on the ocean with gleaming white sails. Val could navigate wherever she wanted to go, and the journey would be an exciting one. She was at the helm, ready to discover uncharted waters. Each morning she could take bracing walks, and in the evening she'd stroll in the sunset. She could lounge by the lapping waves in the summer, sit in a beachside cafe sipping tea in winter. Life would be perfect. Val turned round and headed towards the harbour. Her little cottage, less than half a mile away. She'd go back to her new home, unpack a few more items, make some warming soup, and contemplate what she'd do in the coming year. Perhaps she'd make a list. She pushed her hands deep in her pockets and smiled. Chapter 3. Val was in the kitchen, surrounded by trays of pastries, the aroma of baking in the air. The smart speaker was playing cheerful pop songs, and she was humming along tunelessly. She had just returned from the beach. It was the last day of the year, the sun high in a perfectly blue sky. The sand glittered diamond hard, and the wind had lifted her cares and blown them away. She wasn't superstitious, but if she had been, the omens were good. Now that Christmas was over and almost everything was unpacked and in its place, she felt more settled in her new home. She'd noticed a few days ago that the package of brownies in silver foil she'd left at Crabclaw Cottage had disappeared. Then yesterday, Alice and Kevin had turned up with mince pies and mulled wine. Connie had called round with soup she'd made from home-grown vegetables. And this evening, New Year's Eve, was going to be a delightful celebration. Connie would come round at 7 for supper, then Alice and Kevin would arrive just before midnight to celebrate the arrival of the new year. The neighbours were welcoming her into their lives, and Val intended to be equally hospitable. She'd made cheese straws, mini quiches, and some more of her famous brownies. On impulse, Val wiped her hands, pulled her scrunchie from her hair, and set off for next door. She still hadn't glimpsed the mysterious inhabitant of Crabclaw Cottage, but it was time to introduce herself and to invite him round for some New Year festivities. As Val stepped outside, an icy wind cut through the thin layers of her clothes, making her shiver. The breeze blew in from the ocean, slicing the air. She lifted the coil of rope that held the gate closed. The garden was unkempt, a few weeds growing through clumps of flat grass, the hedge spiky and overgrown. There were no lights on inside. She imagined the scene. The front door would creak open, and a short man wearing a fisherman's cap would peer out. He'd have a white beard and snowy hair. He'd be stocky, wearing a stripy jumper, a yellow oilskin jacket. He'd have bright eyes beneath bushy white brows. At first, he'd seem anxious, then she'd say she was his new neighbour, and his face would relax. He'd thank her for the brownies and invite her into his modest home. She knocked again, but there was still no response. Val shivered. It was too cold to wait any longer, so she hurried back to the warmth of Teazle Cottage, to the kitchen that smelled of savoury onions and sweet baking. Several hours later, she was arranging nibbles on the coffee table. Everything was festive, the fire blazing, tree lights twinkling, paper napkins stacked on gleaming plates. Val's thoughts moved to Ray, and she felt sad. He'd be with Monica in the Sprat tonight, counting down the seconds to midnight, kissing her unashamedly under the mistletoe. A sharp pang of regret cut through her. She pushed it away and concentrated on the preparations. She'd make some mulled wine next. Her phone buzzed and she pulled the mobile from her pocket. A cheery voice exploded in her ear. "Hi, Mum." "Tom, great to hear from you. Happy New Year." "Thanks, and to you too. It's snowing here. You'd really love it in Canada. It's so Christmassy." "Well, it is Christmas." She realised she was smiling, although there was no one to see it. "How's Lottie?" Fine." Tom's voice was hesitant. Mum, I need to talk to you." Val frowned. Tom was about to share some news. She wondered if he and Lottie had broken up. It would be exactly as it had been with his last partner, Sophie. He'd be distraught. The split had affected him, and therefore Val, badly. There had been nothing she could do to make him happy. She couldn't kiss the hurt better. Ray had said as much to her at the time, that Tom was a man now. Breaking up with his girlfriend wasn't like raising a knee. "Tom, are you all right?" Val realised she was clutching the phone in her fist. "Mum, I wanted to tell you first." She held her breath. Lottie had definitely dumped him. Val's mind searched for the words she'd say to make him feel better. Tom was miles away. She couldn't hug him. "Mum, Lottie and I, Tom, we're getting married." Val felt delight mixed with relief. Ray's rejection had left her always expecting the worst. She was suddenly full of enthusiasm. "Oh, that's great news. I can't wait to meet her." "The wedding's in December next year. I want you to come. We're getting married on Christmas Eve." "Oh, how lovely." Val was imagining herself in Canada, in a house made of wood surrounded by mountains, a log fire burning inside. Then bunched in a happy throng outside a snow-topped church, standing with Tom and his smiling bride as the bells pealed. "Tom, that's wonderful." "We'll send proper invitations out soon, but I wanted to talk to you first." "That's great news. I'm so pleased for you both." "Mum, I want to invite Dad." "Of course." Tom's voice was suddenly quiet. "And he'll want to bring Monica." "Ah," Val exhaled. "Well, yes, of course." She felt her heart lurch. "Would you be okay with that?" Val put a hand to her head. She didn't want to see Ray at all. Being alone was the best way to stop painful feelings from flooding back. She forced a smile. "Why wouldn't I be?" Val's voice was excessively cheery. She tried again. "Tom, it's your wedding, and I'll have a lovely time. Of course your father will want to come, and he'll want to bring his Monica. That's fine." Tom paused. "Are you sure? I mean, Lottie and I thought we could say just parents and no partners, since you're on your own." No, not at all." Val's voice was soaring. "I'm just thrilled. What brilliant news. A wedding. Oh, that's so wonderful." "Thanks." Tom sounded relieved. "I'm so glad you understand. Well, I'd better ring Dad now, so Happy New Year." "And to you too." "Mum? Tom?" He sounded concerned, so far away on the other end of the phone. "I hope this year is going to be better than the last one was. It must have been tough, what with the split with Dad." and I'm sorry I wasn't around to—" "Not at all. I'm fine, totally. In fact, I'm loving life here, and—" Val said, "You really don't need to worry. This year will be wonderful. And you're getting married. I'm so excited." "Thanks, Mum. You're the best. We'll talk later." Tom was gone, and Val stared at the phone. Her 39-year-old son was getting married, and she was going to Canada. It would be perfect. Except she felt an uncomfortable sensation in the pit of her stomach, a feeling that was spoiling the joy. She knew what it was, of course. She'd be at the wedding, and Ray would be there with Monica, and she'd have to pretend the whole time that she didn't mind when, in fact, she minded very much. Val wished she didn't care. Ray was free to lead his own life now. Besides, the wedding was a year away, hopefully. By next December, seeing him with Monica wouldn't hurt so badly. But in her heart she had to admit it made her feel miserable. She wondered if she'd find herself in the same hotel as Ray and Monica. They might even be on the same long-haul flight. Val exhaled slowly, pushing the sadness away. She'd concentrate on bringing in a new year full of hope and positivity. She'd pour some wine into a saucepan, add some cinnamon and sugar, and make mulled wine for this evening. She rushed into the kitchen determinedly and grabbed a pan in one hand and red wine in the other, squeezing the neck of the bottle as if she were about to throttle it. Val sipped spice wine and stared into her glass. "It was what Tom said to me, Connie. He said that he and Lottie could just invite parents and no partners since I'm on my own. As if I was some sort of lonely old woman who needed to have allowances made because I was all by myself. He was being kind, of course. But it's ridiculous. It doesn't matter that Ray is with Monica. I can still go alone." "Of course." Connie stared into the firelight. "You must be looking forward to a wedding in Canada." "Oh, I am." Val closed her eyes for a moment. "I can just see myself outside the church, mother of the groom in a new hat, Tom and Lottie so happy together. You'll have a wonderful time." "I hope so, Connie." Val studied Connie's face. Her expression was one of sadness. "When Will got married, I didn't go. He was in New Zealand, and I really should have been there. But, you know, Mike died the year before, and Will's fiancé's family were all together. One big happy throng, and—" "And what?" Connie sighed. "Honestly, I would have felt so lonely by myself. I regret it now. I should have forced myself to go. I just couldn't seem to make myself move." She gazed at the flames, lost in thought. Then she turned to Val quickly. "Oh, I'm sorry, Val. This isn't about me. You'll have a wonderful time. You'll really enjoy seeing Tom and Lottie." She paused, tears gleaming in her eyes. Val breathed out slowly. "You must miss Mike very much." "I do. Every day." Connie dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "It was a long time ago." Connie agreed. "It seems like a lifetime. 20 years. Mike was completely healthy. I mean, he was so active, full of life, never stressed." She threw out a hand to emphasize the ridiculous situation. "He enjoyed cycling, running, we'd go hiking, camping, and then at 56, he had a heart attack." "It's not fair," Val said. "It's not. There has been no one since." "Oh, no," Connie replied. "I don't think I could." Val filled up Connie's glass. "I'm sorry." "We were happy." Connie's eyes brimmed with tears again. "Being alone can be so difficult. Like this wedding. Your ex will be there with his new woman, and just imagine the photos afterwards, the lack of balance. You on one side and him and his girlfriend on the other. She put her hand to her mouth. "Oh, that was so insensitive of me. My emotions are all over the place talking about Mike and weddings. After all these years, I still feel sad. I was just wondering, how do you manage being by yourself?" "I won't let it bother me," Val said grimly. Connie hadn't meant to upset her, but the sudden image of Ray and Monica together at Tom's wedding filled her with fresh anxiety. Val waved a hand, dismissing the emotions that were already swelling. "I'll be fine." Connie lifted her glass to her lips. "I'm sure you will. You seem so strong, Val." "So do you, Connie." Val sipped mulled wine, swallowing hard. She took a deep breath and spoke her thoughts aloud. "Nothing is going to spoil Tom's wedding." She considered her words for a moment and was surprised at the strength of the surfacing emotion. "But you're right. Those wedding pictures will last forever, and there will be Ray and his new partner on one side and me on the other. I can just hear the grandchildren of the future." Val imagined two little versions of Tom, a boy and a girl, and the injustice overwhelmed her. They'll ask why Granny was all on her own and Grandad was with Monica. "Oh, damn!" Connie glanced up, alarmed. "Val?" The words burst from her lips. "It's just so unfair. I mean, Ray at the wedding without a care and me feeling like a spare part." "That won't be true, though. That's just the slant that society puts on single women, that they arrive at a certain age and are suddenly unwanted." "It makes my blood boil." Connie reached out a hand. "But you could still find someone." Val shook her head. "I don't think I could be bothered. What would be the point?" "Maybe just for the wedding," Connie said. "How about taking a stand-in, you know? Not a real partner, just a temporary +1. Val hooted, glad of the opportunity to push aside the overwhelming sense of betrayal, to share a joke. "A handsome guest. Well, that would make everyone sit up and take notice." "Imagine the wedding photos," Connie laughed. "Ray and his partner, and then you, holding hands with a dreamy man. That would show Ray that you were over him." Val's brows knitted together. "Yes, that would be a photo for the grandchildren." "It most certainly would," Connie said. "Val, you're not seriously thinking?" "Why not?" Val swigged mulled wine, an orange segment in her mouth. She swallowed it, the juice sharp as it burst on her tongue, sharp as the new idea that was suddenly forming. It would help her to cope with the feelings of being abandoned and unloved. "Yes, I have a whole year. I'll find somebody who's just picture perfect." "A partner?" "No," Val's eyes widened. "Not in the sense of a permanent relationship. I mean someone who will be my date just for the wedding. I'll show anybody who thinks older women are past it that I can shine from that wedding photograph forever." "Exactly. People think that it's all right for a man in his 70s to find a new girlfriend, but not a woman of the same age." Connie leaned forward. "This is what we'll do. We'll start in January and audition contenders, and by December we'll have found you the perfect guest. You never know. You might even find Mr. Right." Val shook her head. "I'm not looking for Mr. Right, Connie. I'm looking for Mr. December." "What if you find him too early? What if you find him in June?" Connie asked. Val smiled. "Then I'll just have to string him along for a few months." "Oh, this is fun," Connie said. "I'm looking forward to this new year so much now." She met Val's eyes. "To new beginnings." "And auditioning new men." Val's enthusiasm was building. "A whole year of them. Until I find the perfect +1. Absolutely." I'm not being the lonely old woman standing all by herself with everyone feeling sorry for me. Val thought for a moment, and then the right words came. To equality, Connie. And to revenge. To revenge. Connie clinked her glass against Val's. There was a sharp knock at the door, and both women sat upright, listening. Then Val glanced at the clock. It was 11:30. The knock came again, and then Kevin's excited voice rumbled from behind the door. There's champagne on ice out here. It's bloody freezing. Let us in, Val. Just coming. Val winked and raised her glass again. To a wonderful year, Connie. This is going to be the best. Mr. January. Chapter 4. The next morning, the 1st of